They've built up a great city here in Amsterdam. It's a city of a population of about 1 million, and it's beautifully planned. The old buildings dating from generally the 17th and 18th century are still very well preserved here, lining the banks of the many canals. Very scenic and peaceful, picturesque canals with the tree-lined banks and seagulls and sidewalk cafes and pedestrians everywhere in Amsterdam. In the summertime, you'll find lots of these outdoor cafes, and the friendly people of Amsterdam gathering over the bar, gathering at the coffee shops, and just generally hanging out in their little neighborhood clubs and cafes. You'll find that in Amsterdam, one of the greatest attractions is the people themselves. They truly are among the friendliest people any place on the planet. And one of the nice things about it for the American traveler is that they all speak pretty good English, and they're happy to talk with you for the most part. You'll see lots of bicycles in Amsterdam, and lots of narrow streets that are restricted to pedestrians and two-wheel traffic. They keep the cars out of the main part of town. You'll see these glass boats in the central harbor in town, and they provide one of the nicest ways to see the city of Amsterdam. Here's our Hawaii tour group boarding one of these very comfortable boats, and there's about 9 canals that form the city itself, and the boats take you through most of these canals and give you a real inside canal eye view of the old historic buildings of the city of Amsterdam. There's open windows. You can photograph through the glass ceilings and through the glass picture windows. Going under some of the many low bridges in Amsterdam, there's 1,000 bridges in this city. The old Gable buildings of Amsterdam. This is the classic architecture of Holland. It's a city that's built really on a series of islands, very much like Venice, further to the south in Italy. They say that there's about 5 million wooden pilings that hold up these buildings. And you'll notice that the buildings are quite narrow. These were the patrician houses of the wealthy merchants back in the 18th century and the 17th century. But they were frugal, wealthy merchants, and built modest, narrow houses. They weren't really showing off ostentatious wealth. And also they were taxed based on the width of their house. So the narrower the house, the cheaper the property tax that they had to pay. This boat ride can also be taken in the evening, where they serve wine and cheese by candlelight on board the ships. And the city itself is illuminated with beautiful lights strung out across the bridges and across the building facades in the evening. So that's a very enjoyable, different kind of atmosphere for the boat ride. You get a chance to see the main inner harbor of the city from the boat also. And we can continue our tour on our tour bus with the city tour included as part of our program here. You can also be going by trolley. This is one of the great ways to get around the city of Amsterdam. You notice these old buildings are still in very good condition. They're 400 years old for the most part, but they've been used and renovated over the years, and even today there's people living in them, there's offices, there's shops, and so the buildings are in very good shape. They're not just empty museums. There's also a concert hall and an opera hall in the city. The main landmarks of the city, however, are not great palaces and cathedrals and public buildings, but it's those old homes, once again, that you'll find everywhere in the city. There's 7,000 historic houses that are on the National Register in Holland with their beautiful, distinctive gable style. This is one of the fancier hotels in town, built in the French style. And the Dom Palace. This is the royal home. It's not open to the public. It's located right in the very center of town. And just across from the Dom is several more canals. The canals are everywhere in Amsterdam. The Dom Palace was built on 13,000 wooden piles. More views of these glass boats. The best place to catch a boat ride is right here in that little inner harbor. Back on the Dom Square, just a block away, you'll see this beautiful cobblestone paving. This is the main square in the center of town. It's the largest open paved space in the city. In English, Dom means dam. That's because it was the site of the first major dam that was constructed back in the 13th century that began the formation of building the city of Amsterdam. And just a block away is the main post office, a beautiful old Gothic Victorian-style building. You'll find the trolley cars running every place in the city, and it's a very convenient way to get around town. You can buy a one-day pass or a two-day pass. Three-day pass will cost you about $12. Or you can just simply walk. One of the most beautiful things about Amsterdam is it's a very compact city. And the urban center is really built for pedestrians and trolleys, as you can see here in this mix on one of the main shopping malls. Another thing that Amsterdam is famous for is the eccentric characters who live here. It's kind of the last refuge of the hippies and oddballs of Europe. It's a city of great tolerance and compassion and diversity and freedom. It's a city of live and let live. There's lots of bicycles here. There's 600,000 bicycles for 800,000 people, making it the most bicycles per capita in all of Europe, certainly. And several of the reasons for the bicycles are the very flat terrain and the fairly short distances that you'll find any place in the city. You can rent a bicycle if you'd like to get around like a native. The traffic in Amsterdam is really much friendlier than you'll find in the major cities such as London and Paris and Rome. But again, the nicest way to get around is simply walking. There's all kinds of tourist attractions to see here in the city. They've got Mexican restaurants, Chinese restaurants. There's city tours that you can take, and you can take one-day excursions through the country of Holland. They have an 8-hour tour that brings you up to the fishing markets. Now, these people are showing some great interest in a shop window. What could they be looking at? It's French fries. Here's a store specializing in nothing but French fries. And then there's another shopping district on the other part of town. This is just a few blocks from the main section of the city, and you'll notice that it is the red light district. The ladies are on display in their windows, right there in their own shop windows. It's a very unique kind of situation in Europe to find a red light district here so open. It's all very legal. It's very legitimate. It's been a historic tradition here in Amsterdam for hundreds of years, being an old harbor town, welcoming the sailors into port. And curiously, you'll find the red light district is in one of the most scenic and historic parts of town here, with the narrow, old, shady canals, shady because of the trees, that is, and reflections of buildings in the water. It's all very safe and friendly there in the red light district, and we find that our Hawaii tour bunch enjoys just walking through there to have a look at the sights, that is. And then nearby is other districts of town. There's the shopping areas, restaurant districts. Again, the trolleys. Here's the Rembrandtsplein, one of several of the lively squares in the center of town. And then on to several of the art museums. This is the main building of the Museum, which holds the great collection of Dutch art. And there's also the Van Gogh Museum right nearby. The Van Gogh Museum has got 200 oil paintings by that Dutch master Van Gogh. It's the finest collection, certainly, of Van Goghs anywhere in the world. Paintings far too priceless to even be insured anymore. They would probably cost an average of $30 million. To fully appreciate his work, you've got to see it in person, to see how he just caked on the oil pigments. The three-dimensional quality of the paintings can never be seen in a reproduction or a photograph. You've got to go there in person. The Rijksmuseum has the Night Watch by Rembrandt, which is the greatest work by that most famous of all Dutch painters. There's also a large collection of other Flemish painters such as Vermeer and John Steen and De Hooch, and some additional European painters such as Goya and Tintoretto and Veronese, among others. It's a great museum, the Rijksmuseum. There's also the Stedelijk Museum nearby in a complex in a museum park area of the city. The Stedelijk Museum concentrates more in contemporary modern art. Probably, if you only have time to go to one museum, make it the Van Gogh Museum because of its superb collection of these original masterpieces by perhaps the most popular of all painters, Vincent van Gogh. You'll recognize quite a few pictures that you've seen many times in books and postcards and posters and various publications. It might be one of the most memorable things that you do in your entire trip to Europe if you're a real art lover. The city at night really comes alive. Amsterdam booms and bustles all night till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's very safe to be out walking around in the main streets. You'll see there's hundreds and thousands of people out enjoying themselves, having a great time. The city is truly a summer festival. Street musicians, dancing, sidewalk cafes. The trolleys run till late in the evening, and you can always take a taxi if you're out later than that. There's a variety of these outdoor plazas in the city. Some specialize in jazz performances, some have pop music clubs, there's some discotheques, and others are just quiet restaurant neighborhoods. You have a whole variety to pick from here in the heart of the city. Here we are in the famous Leidse line of Amsterdam, Holland. This is one of the most lively outdoor cafes in all of Europe. There's a plaza with 29 restaurants all around it, street musicians, lively conversation, and terrific Dutch beer. The good life in the Leidse line. Notice how many food dishes in this dinner for two. This is the Richtafel. And it's not unusual to have as many as 21 different kinds of food served to you with the Indonesian cuisine of Amsterdam. Leaving the city behind now as we roll through the flat green fields of Holland,